George Peppard hated that Mr. T was paid more than him. Mr. T was furious that Peppard called him the worst actor on set. NBC was terrified their hit show would implode. While the A-Team's heroes worked together perfectly on TV, the real-life war between its stars got so bad, they needed a famous actor friend to step in as peacekeeper. After 40 years, we're finally exposing the ugly truth about TV's most explosive feud, and why NBC did everything to keep it secret. NBC was struggling in the early 1980s. Ratings were down, and the network needed something bold. Brandon Tartikoff, the entertainment president, had a vision for a show that would mix action, humor, and camaraderie. He wanted something fresh, something that felt like The Dirty Dozen mixed with Mission Impossible. But instead of pitching a detailed concept, he gave producer Stephen J. Cannell just one image to work with. "Imagine Mr. T driving the car," he said. That was enough. Cannell knew exactly what to do. He and writer Frank Lupo had only 2 weeks to turn that idea into a full script. But they worked fast. They created a team of Vietnam veterans who had been framed for a crime they didn't commit. Now, fugitives, they used their skills to help those in need while staying one step ahead of the military. The setup was simple but powerful. 4 men with distinct personalities. Hannibal Smith, the mastermind who always had a plan. Face, the smooth-talking con artist. B.A. Baracus, the tough mechanic with a fear of flying. Murdoch, the unpredictable pilot who might be crazy or just brilliant. The show needed actors who could bring these characters to life. George Peppard was cast as Hannibal. He was a Hollywood veteran, known for Breakfast at Tiffany's, and he brought authority to the role. The producers originally cast Tim Dunnigan as Face, but he was replaced by Dirk Benedict because he looked too young to be a Vietnam vet. Dwight Schultz landed the role of Murdoch, turning what could have been a side character into one of the show's most popular figures. And then there was Mr. T. After his breakout role in Rocky III, Mr. T was already a star. His mohawk, gold chains, and tough guy persona were unforgettable. The role of B.A. Baracus was written just for him. He made the character his own, turning B.A. into one of the most recognizable figures in television. But behind the scenes, things weren't always smooth. Peppard, a classically trained actor, didn't always get along with Mr. T, whose fame was quickly outshining his own. Despite the tension, their on-screen chemistry worked, and the team felt real. NBC knew they had something special, so they gave the show the best possible launch. When the A-Team premiered on January 23, 1983, it was an instant sensation. The first regular episode aired right after Super Bowl XVII and grabbed 26.4% of the TV audience. That put it in 4th place in the Nielsen ratings, an incredible achievement for a new show. It had action, humor, and a strong sense of camaraderie that set it apart from other TV dramas. The fights and explosions were over the top, but no one ever seemed to get seriously hurt. Even when a helicopter went down in flames, the pilots would be seen crawling out unharmed. This made it exciting without being too intense for families to watch together. The story followed 4 Vietnam War veterans framed for a crime they didn't commit. On the run from the military, they worked as soldiers of fortune, helping people while avoiding capture. Every episode had a similar structure. The team would get backed into a corner, then use their skills to build weapons or armored vehicles from whatever junk they could find. This creativity made every mission feel fresh and exciting. Critics called it comic book action, comparing it to Tom and Jerry because of its slapstick style. Some dismissed it as shallow entertainment, but viewers saw it differently. By the 2nd season, the A-Team was one of NBC's biggest hits. Its audience share reached 20 to 24%, beating out major competitors like Dallas and Simon & Simon. But television was changing. By the 4th season, family-friendly shows like The Cosby Show started pulling viewers away. Even though its ratings dropped, the A-Team had already become a major part of pop culture. It was more than a TV show. It was a phenomenon. One reason the A-Team stayed in people's minds was its unforgettable catchphrases. Colonel John Hannibal Smith's most famous line, "I love it when a plan comes together," first appeared in the pilot episode Mexican Sleigh Ride on January 23, 1983. He usually said it with a grin while chomping on a cigar, right after the team pulled off another impossible victory. It became a symbol of the show's clever and confident spirit. Then there was B.A. Baracus, played by Mr. T, who stole the show with his tough guy attitude. His most famous line, "I ain't getting on no plane," was a running gag. B.A. was terrified of flying, so every time the team needed to get on a plane, his teammates had to trick or drug him into going. Fans loved it. His other catchphrases were just as memorable. "Shut up, fool," became an instant classic. Even "I pity the fool," which was made famous by Rocky III, fit perfectly with his character on the A-Team. Hannibal had his own signature phrase, "on the jazz," which he used when coming up with his wild tactical ideas. These catchphrases became part of everyday speech and are still quoted today. The show didn't just take over television, it took over toy stores, too. Galoob released a set of A-Team action figures, including Hannibal, Face, Murdoch, and B.A. There was even a larger Mr. T figure, complete with gold chains and a mohawk. But the real star of the toy line was the team's black and red van, which became just as iconic as the characters themselves. Lunchboxes featuring the A-Team became a must-have item in the mid-1980s. Kids carried them to school to show they were fans. The popularity didn't stop there. Board games, puzzles, and toy versions of the van flooded the market. One of the strangest A-Team spin-offs was Mr. T, an animated series that aired from 1983 to 1985. Instead of being about the A-Team, it followed a cartoon version of Mr. T leading a team of gymnasts who solved mysteries. It was a bizarre idea, but kids loved it. The show ran for 30 episodes and helped turn Mr. T into an even bigger pop culture icon. Clothing was another big part of the A-Team's success. T-shirts with B.A.'s scowling face and catchphrases like, "I ain't getting on no plane," were everywhere. Even today, retro A-Team shirts are still being sold, proving that its influence hasn't faded. At its peak, the A-Team wasn't just a television show, it was a movement. It shaped pop culture, created legendary catchphrases, and left behind some of the most recognizable TV moments of the 1980s. Even now, the sight of that black and red van, or the sound of Hannibal's voice saying, "I love it when a plan comes together," brings back memories. Some shows disappear after they go off the air. The A-Team made history. George Peppard and Mr. T were the two biggest names on the A-Team, but behind the scenes, they couldn't stand each other. The tension wasn't just about clashing personalities. It was about status, money, and a changing Hollywood landscape. By the time the show hit its second season, Mr. T had become its biggest attraction, earning $80,000 per week. That made him the highest-paid actor on set, surpassing Peppard's $65,000 per episode. For Peppard, a classically trained actor with a long Hollywood career, this was a hard pill to swallow. Peppard had starred in major films like Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Blue Max, but by the early 80s, his career had hit a rough patch. Financial troubles from multiple divorces and struggles with alcoholism had forced him to take a TV role he might have turned down in his prime. Meanwhile, Mr. T, who had never trained as an actor, became a pop culture sensation almost overnight. His mohawk, gold chains, and signature line, "I pity the fool," made him a favorite among young viewers. Fans tuned in as much for him as they did for the rest of the cast, something that infuriated Peppard. He saw himself as the real star, the veteran actor leading the show, yet he was being overshadowed by a former bodyguard with no formal acting background. It wasn't just about money. Mr. T's popularity extended far beyond the A-Team. He had his own merchandise, cartoons, and public appearances. Peppard, who had taken the role of Hannibal Smith out of necessity, found himself increasingly sidelined. According to cast member Dwight Schultz, who played Murdoch, Peppard never accepted that Mr. T was the show's main attraction. The resentment became so intense that Peppard reportedly refused to speak directly to Mr. T, instead using co-star Dirk Benedict, Face, as an intermediary. Peppard didn't just ignore Mr. T, he insulted him. On multiple occasions, he reportedly called him not a real actor and the worst actor on set. He didn't keep these opinions private either. He openly belittled Mr. T's acting skills, dismissing him as little more than a personality gimmick. Peppard had trained under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. He had built his career on dramatic roles, while Mr. T had been cast in Rocky III and the A-Team more for his physical presence than his acting ability. To Peppard, that distinction mattered. But Mr. T didn't just take the insults quietly. One day, he came across an article where Peppard had made these comments publicly. Instead of confronting him in private, Mr. T brought the article to set and read the remarks aloud in front of the entire cast and crew. Everyone stopped. The tension was thick. This wasn't just a petty disagreement anymore. It was a full-blown feud for everyone to see. Mr. T had worked hard to make the A-Team a success, yet he was still being treated as a second-class actor by its leading man. Even after this public showdown, Peppard didn't back down. He continued to act like he was the show's true star. Some days, he left the set hours before filming wrapped, skipping out on scenes he was supposed to be in. Sometimes, he'd leave as much as 7 hours early. This behavior frustrated the entire production team, but it especially angered Mr. T. To him, it was unprofessional and unfair to the rest of the cast and crew. Eventually, he took his concerns to the producers, insisting that Peppard should be held accountable for disrupting the filming schedule. Despite all the bad blood, Mr. T never pushed for Peppard to be fired. Even after being insulted and dismissed, he recognized that the A-Team worked best with all of them together. He understood that personal conflicts shouldn't ruin the show itself, but the divide between them never healed. Peppard saw himself as a serious actor, part of an old Hollywood that valued training and craft. Mr. T was a new kind of star, someone who didn't need classical training to captivate an audience. By 1986, the A-Team had reached its 5th season, but things behind the scenes were falling apart. George Peppard, the show's established star, and Mr. T, its breakout icon, had been at odds for years. Their tension had started as subtle friction, but had grown into open hostility. The cast and crew had learned to work around their clashes, but the producers saw the writing on the wall. They needed a solution before things got worse. Their answer was Robert Vaughn, a veteran actor known for The Man from UNCLE. Vaughn had built a reputation as a professional who could handle strong personalities. The producers cast him as General Hunt Stockwell, a high-ranking government agent who would take control of the team. His arrival wasn't just a narrative shift. It was also a strategic move behind the scenes. Vaughn had been close friends with Peppard for years, and the producers hoped his presence might smooth things over. If anyone could get Peppard to let go of his frustrations, it was Vaughn. At the time, the A-Team was struggling with declining ratings. The format had grown repetitive, and the network wanted something fresh. Vaughn's character forced the team into government missions in exchange for potential pardons, creating a new dynamic. The idea was to shake up the storyline and, at the same time, calm the growing storm between Peppard and Mr. T. But despite Vaughn's efforts, the real problem never went away. Peppard had built his career in Hollywood classics like Breakfast at Tiffany's. He saw himself as the show's leading man. But Mr. T, a former bouncer and wrestler with no formal acting background, had stolen the spotlight. Fans loved him. The media couldn't get enough of him, and Peppard hated it. He resented how much attention Mr. T received and didn't hide his feelings. Vaughn's presence helped maintain professionalism on set, but it couldn't erase the tension that had been simmering for years. While Vaughn had been brought in as a mediator, it was Dwight Schultz who often found himself playing peacemaker. Schultz, who played the team's eccentric pilot Howling Mad Murdoch, was known for being easygoing. He got along with everyone, which made him the one person who could diffuse conflicts. Years later, Schultz admitted that the tension came down to egos. Peppard had spent decades building his career. Mr. T had skyrocketed to fame almost overnight after Rocky III. The power shift on the A-Team was hard for Peppard to accept. Schultz recalled one moment that made everything worse. Peppard had once called Mr. T not a real actor. That comment ended up in a magazine. One day, Mr. T read the article aloud on set. The mood instantly turned cold. Schultz tried to lighten the situation, but the damage had been done. Even with all the behind-the-scenes drama, Peppard and Mr. T never let it affect their performances. On screen, Hannibal and B.A. worked as a perfect team. Hannibal was the mastermind, B.A. was the muscle, and together they created some of the show's most iconic moments. Fans never suspected that off-camera they could barely stand each other. Schultz later reflected on how common this was in Hollywood. Many actors who played close friends or allies on screen had real-life conflicts. The best ones knew how to put personal issues aside when the cameras rolled. Peppard and Mr. T may have clashed behind the scenes, but when it mattered most, they delivered. Moreover, Melinda Kulea played Amy Allen in the A-Team, but her time on the show was cut short. She was fired in the middle of season 2, and the reasons behind her departure were messy. When the show started in 1983, Amy was introduced as a bold journalist who hired the team in the pilot episode. But as the episodes went on, her role faded. She became more of a background character with little to do. Kulea wasn't happy about that. She wanted Amy to take part in action scenes, even get involved in fights, but the producers had a different vision, and George Peppard wasn't on her side either. Peppard, the show's lead actor, reportedly believed the A-Team should remain an all-male show. His influence likely played a role in pushing Kulea out. Things got worse when she received a script where Amy had no lines at all. It was a clear sign that her time was running out. Producer John Ashley even told her agent that she needed to shape up or she's out. Not long after, she was gone. To replace her, the producers introduced a new female character, Tanya Baker, played by Marla Heasley. But she didn't last long either. Heasley later revealed that the producers thought Kulea was too tomboyish, though some believed her exit had more to do with outdated views on female characters in action shows. Kulea's firing became one of the most talked about behind-the-scenes moments in the A-Team's history. It highlighted the gender politics of the 1980s and the conflicts happening off-screen, but the setback didn't end her career. She went on to appear in shows like Knots Landing and Beverly Hills 90210 before retiring from acting in 2001 after marrying director Peter Markle. Even with its success, the A-Team wasn't immune to behind-the-scenes struggles, but that wasn't the only issue the show faced. While the A-Team was a hit, it was also criticized for being repetitive. Every episode followed a familiar pattern. The team helped a client, built some kind of makeshift weapon or vehicle, and took down the bad guys. There were explosions, car chases, and endless gunfire, but no one ever got seriously hurt. This became a running joke among critics. Co-creator Stephen J. Cannell admitted that the writers would test how far they could push the action while keeping it completely bloodless. Some even compared the violence to Tom and Jerry, chaotic but without consequences. Some episodes had up to 46 violent acts, yet characters always walked away without a scratch. Compared to other action shows of the time, it felt unrealistic. At first, this formula worked. Families and younger viewers enjoyed the excitement without the dark realism of other action dramas. But over time, audiences started losing interest. By season 4, the ratings were dropping. The show had ranked 6th overall at its peak, but by 1985 it had fallen to 30th place. More family-oriented shows like The Cosby Show and Growing Pains were dominating primetime television. The A-Team was struggling to keep up. By season 5, NBC knew the show needed a shakeup. The ratings had slipped even further, falling to 61st place. The network pressured Cannell to make big changes, hoping to bring the audience back. The entire premise was reworked. The A-Team was captured, court-martialed, and forced to work for General Hunt Stockwell, played by Robert Vaughn. He promised them pardons in exchange for completing dangerous government missions. A new team member, Frankie Santana, was introduced, but his presence disrupted the chemistry that fans loved. Even the iconic theme song was changed. Instead of reviving the show, these changes pushed longtime viewers away. Fans missed the lighthearted schemes and over-the-top action that made the show fun. The new direction made Peppard's character, Hannibal Smith, feel less like the leader of the team and more like Stockwell's pawn. The changes backfired. The ratings kept falling. NBC canceled the A-Team in December 1986 after airing only 13 episodes of season 5. That was 2 episodes short of the 100 needed for syndication. The ending felt rushed, and the final episodes tried to give some closure, but it wasn't enough. Looking back, Season 5 is often seen as the moment the A-Team lost its identity. The drastic format changes didn't save the show. They only made its downfall happen faster. But even with its flaws, the A-Team remains one of the most iconic shows of the 1980s. After the A-Team ended, Peppard found himself searching for work once again. He stayed active in television, starring in Man Against the Mob in 1988. He played Detective Sergeant Frank Doki, a cop fighting organized crime in post-World War II Los Angeles. The film did well enough to get a sequel, Man Against the Mob: The Chinatown Murders, in 1989. Plans for a third movie were in place, but they were canceled after Peppard was diagnosed with lung cancer in the early 1990s. He also tried to return to feature films, but Hollywood had moved on. His tough guy persona had once made him a star, but now it worked against him. Studios were looking for younger actors. He struggled to find good roles. In interviews, he admitted feeling frustrated. He wanted to do more meaningful work, but financial security often came first. Rather than wait for the right role, Peppard turned back to the stage. In 1988, he starred in Papa, a one-man play about Ernest Hemingway. The project was personal to him. Hemingway had battled addiction and fame, just like Peppard. He poured his own struggles into the performance, financing the production himself. He took the play on tour across the U.S., and the reviews were strong. It reminded audiences that he was more than just a TV action star. Despite his health problems, he kept working. He appeared in Silence Like Glass in 1989 and Night of the Fox in 1990. His last television appearance was in an episode of Matlock in 1994. That role was supposed to launch a new series about a father-daughter private investigator team, but Peppard's declining health made it impossible. A longtime smoker, he had gone through 3 packs a day for years. In 1992, he had surgery to remove part of one lung. He quit smoking after that, but the damage had already been done. In 1994, while preparing for another Matlock spin-off, he was hospitalized with pneumonia. His body was too weak to recover. On May 8, 1994, he passed away at the age of 65. His career had lasted nearly 4 decades. There were highs and lows, triumphs and failures. He had been a Hollywood leading man, a television star, and a stage performer. He had battled addiction and fought for second chances. And in the end, he left behind something few actors ever do: an unforgettable legacy. After the A-Team made him a star, Mr. T stayed in the spotlight with new projects. One of the biggest was Mr. T, an animated series that aired on NBC from 1983 to 1985. In the show, he played a coach leading a gymnastics team that traveled the world solving mysteries. Each episode mixed action with humor, and at the end, Mr. T would deliver a moral lesson. The series ran for 3 seasons, with 30 episodes in total. Even after it ended, it found new life on networks like USA Cartoon Express, and later on, Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. At the same time, he made a name for himself in professional wrestling. In 1985, he teamed up with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania Y to take on Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. The match was a huge event and helped turn wrestling into even more of a mainstream spectacle. Some wrestlers didn't like that a Hollywood star was stepping into their world. They felt he hadn't paid his dues, but Mr. T was no stranger to the sport. He had been a wrestling champion in Chicago, and he proved his skills again when he returned for WrestleMania 2 in 1986. This time, he faced Roddy Piper in a boxing match that added another chapter to their rivalry. Outside of wrestling, he kept his larger-than-life image alive through commercials and endorsements. One of his most famous was the Get Some Nuts campaign for Snickers. The ads were funny, but they also showed why Mr. T was still a cultural icon. His tough guy attitude, combined with humor, made him just as entertaining in a commercial as he was on TV or in the ring. Then came a battle tougher than anything he had faced before. In 1995, he was diagnosed with T-cell lymphoma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer. It was a fight for his life, but he refused to see it as a defeat. He turned to his faith for strength, drawing inspiration from the Book of Job. Even during intense chemotherapy, he kept a positive mindset and shared messages of hope with others facing the same struggle. For years, he had worked with children battling cancer through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Now, he had to show the same strength he had always encouraged in them. In interviews, he said that his belief in God and his willpower helped him push through. By 2025, he remains cancer-free and continues to inspire others by speaking about his journey. His experience also shaped the projects he chose later. In 2017, he joined Dancing with the Stars and dedicated his performances to children fighting cancer at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. It was a different side of Mr. T, one that showed his heart as much as his strength. His comeback wasn't just in reality TV. He became popular with younger audiences through voice acting. In Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 2009, he played Officer Earl Devereaux, a tough but loving father who felt like an animated version of himself. Then from 2011 to 2013, he hosted World's Craziest Fools, a BBC Three comedy series featuring viral clips of people caught in ridiculous situations. With his booming voice and classic catchphrases, he made even the simplest videos more entertaining. One thing he refused to do was let Hollywood redefine his legacy. When a film adaptation of The A-Team was made in 2010, he turned down a cameo. He didn't like how another actor was trying to copy his style. For him, the role of B.A. Baracus wasn't just a character, it was part of who he was.